This is like the second hackathon I did. So this was for Grindrod Bank, and we did a
Joan, are you still there?
uh,
Cool.
Welcome
Sorry,
back.
I think just starting the recording might have caused a hiccup. We can hear you again.
okay, cool. Where did you lose? Where did you lose me?
You were telling us about your first hackathon and how you're an international spy, but you were
Oh
saying you
no.
didn't win prizes.
So there were only jobs for first places. That's pretty it. Second place got me nothing, right? Sorry, someone's gonna phone and talk to them later. So then the second hackathon we did, this was with Windra Bank, and it was obviously for banking. So how it works, and we did repeat this over and over and over again. Usually, have to present some type of slides. You got 10 minutes to present like exactly what you want. So, like slides, you'll have like maximum 10 and give like 1 minute per slide. And we can see like examples of slides that we did with examples of like how we want to do things. But we'd divvy up time. So we'd say, okay, we've got 48 hours. The first 4 hours is going to be our initial planning, and we're going to push through ideas. And at the end of the first 4 hours, we're going to have our initial idea that we're going to go on. Okay. So in this case, we didn't come up with this for the initial idea. This was actually our second or third idea after 2 or 3 iterations. And usually we find that. So usually we find that our initial idea is an absolute pure failure. There's just technical challenges, or we don't know how to do something, or it's just too hard to do in 72 hours or 48 hours. You know, it's like you're looking at it and you're saying, well, how much can we actually do? So that's exactly like a normal project. And as developers, we know exactly how our time goes. We say it's going to take us 30 minutes and it's going to take us 4 hours. So this one we came up with the idea of a selective open obfuscated bank account. We came second here. We won 15,000 rand.
Sorry, Joan, are you sharing your presentation?
Yeah. So do you see here?
Evolt, can you see it? Sorry, I just want a second opinion because I'm only seeing the Teams.
I'm only seeing Microsoft Teams.
I think you may have shared the wrong window.
Okay.
Yes.
Sorry.
There's the beer.
There we go. There's the beer. I also before this skit, you could see the beer.
Sorry,
So,
I thought we were having like a discussion before the time. You know?
It was there and then it disappeared. So I thought that was planned.
No, that wasn't planned. I'm very sorry. So let's get back to this. So like in this one, we came up with the idea of a selective open obfuscated bank account. Like that sounds really crazy and really hard, but it actually is quite a simple solution. It took us a total of 8 hours to come up with the solution. And then it took us another 40 hours to make a working MVP. So what can you make in an MVP? Usually you can make a front end if it's a web based, and you can make some slides, right? And then you mock all of the back end.
John, sorry to interrupt you again. We're just seeing the first slide like within slides on Google Slides. So I'm not sure
Yeah,
if you're
I've got a
sharing.
whole bunch of them. I'm just going to go through some of the examples and some of the things we did.
Awesome. Cool.
And just show examples.
Cool.
So this what we do is we usually come up with a story, and you'll see this comes over and over and over again. So it's like, this was the story of Steve. So he has a growing business. He wants to grow it faster, but he needs some cash and he needs some investors. And the question is, how is he going to attract better investors? And we always pose a question. So if we look here, we had an issue and we identified the problem. So the problem was panic buttons and people stations. And so that actually is an actual product that exists, and that's got embedded stuff. And there's a few extra things you can do. And we basically built a prototype that worked. So this one worked off basically Bluetooth, which is highly unstable. But that's where it got to the point where we said, oh, it's too unstable to go. And then on this one, we did a basic web page and a small mini app where you can actually have multiple stops on one app. So the idea was, where there's checkers 48 or checkers 60, and there's Pick and Pay ASAP. It's the equivalent of that, but we were saying, well, what's the point? Like, you can do multiple stopping in one go. The irony is, about 72 hours after we started investigating this one, and we were like, well, actually, it's got some potential. We started actually seeing people actually deploying those types of things. So it was like, well, the opportunity left as soon as we presented it, it was already done. But yeah, and then this one, obviously, I wish I still had the slide. This is actually the alpha pack. So this is actually an Android application that we built for MTN, which their mobile system is now based on, which allows you to transfer basically airtime between users and to make payments with users. So there's some interesting things we did, and it was very varied. And it was always depending on the hackathon. So we'd get together. I'd usually get together with the new team. We'd make agreements beforehand. So the type of team agreements we'd have is, if you don't do any work, don't expect any outcome. The ones that we had physical, in all honesty, we got a lot of work done. We actually had things working well, and we were actually able to show the prototypes and show that the prototypes work. We got a little bit of the back end working. This one as well, we got the back end working. We actually had it controlling and pushing through messages to people and investigating the prototype bank account. So we had a small database. And how we did it was quite interesting. So what we did is we used libraries they're going out of fashion. So if we could find a library that we had pre-packed, we used it. And then this one was terrible because I basically ended up doing most of the work. This was my first virtual one that just was, it was really bad because people would log in and then they'd log out, and then you wouldn't see anyone or wouldn't hear anything, and you'd be like, do they still exist, type of thing. And that was just the end of it. I'm like, why am I spending 2 days to work? And the real value I get is collaboration. And if you go into a hackathon, the real thing you should be looking for is looking to talk to people, looking to do the basics. So part of the basics is get a group of 4 people and see what their backgrounds are, see where they can add value, see where they can do something. And I mean, I've had tech people and I've had non-tech people. So some of the best ideas come from non-tech people who just simply don't know how to do anything. But they can do research, they can make slides, they can do stories, So one of the nice things is like over here, you can see the story. That, well, we can create followers so that if someone doesn't trust someone, they can follow and they can see how the investments are going. It's about sharing information and sharing business outcomes. Like most business ideas, that's what people want to see, is things that are apparent and visible. This one was health, so this one was more about being connected to a device. But yet again, so one of the things we did with this, actually, we couldn't get this device. This device was in China, but what we could prove is we could link it to Bluetooth. So we paired a Bluetooth mouse, and then we recorded in our phone. We recorded one of the device pushes, and every time we pushed the device, it would go and it would send an SMS message out to 4 friends that were pre-listed in the database. 1 second. This is the one problem about 6 o'clock. Yeah. So we had 4 friends like hard-coded in the database that it would send an SMS through. And I literally took the mouse and went, okay, this is the example of a Bluetooth device. Obviously, this is a coded mouse. If I right-click here, and then it like triggered everything off and sent the messages. And the judges were actually pretty impressed with that, because they could see something working and they could see something came out of it. What I personally got from hackathons is I got some really good friends. So people I still talk to today, even after 3 or 4 years. I've got a friend, they went over to England and we still chat and like, well, what about that idea? There's still an opening in the market. Let's finish it off sometime. The thing I'm really bad at is actually finishing off projects. Like once I've solved the issue, usually after 72 hours, I'm a bit burnt out, or 48 hours, I'm a bit burnt out. So I'm like, talk to me in a month. But that's usually how hackathons have gone for me. So one of the tricks is something called an elevator pitch. So an elevator pitch, you get pretty much 5 to 10 minutes to show your idea to someone and to explain the core concept. So how we explain the core concept is we give a need, so we show that there's value, we give a potential solution, and we show how that solves the need, and then we show a working prototype, so an MVP. And if you can get that down, you can generally win most of the product development hackathons pretty easy. The hardest bit is the MVPs. So different technologies I've worked on this. This was my first attempt at using Flutter, and that went really well. And I've never used Flutter ever again. This was my first attempt at actually integrating hardware with software. So actually integrating Bluetooth into an Android library. And that was hard, actually. It was a lot harder than I thought it would be. And we spent a good 10 hours just getting the Bluetooth device to work. Once the Bluetooth device was working, then it was easy. Like it was just patch data together and it's done. Put some screens up and it's done. With MTN, and I still got an emulator for this. The prototype looked horrible, but it actually was. This is the first time we got something fully functional within 48 hours. So you could literally go and type in someone's phone number and say, I'm sending you 10 rands worth of airtime, and it would send it. The only problem we did is when we demonstrated it to the judges, we got the judges' phone number. And what we didn't know is that the judges have the special MTN line. So when you're doing a demonstration, do it with something you know, something you can reproduce every time. And that special line can't actually receive cash or airtime. So it just carried on failing on us, and we didn't know why. And if we had if we'd just asked the questions of the judges beforehand, we would have said, no, just hold this phone over here and confirm it's an MTN phone. And then given the other judge who was on a telecom phone, so an ATA phone, and say, okay, ATA phone, send money to an MTN phone and send it back. And once we realized that they couldn't get it, we actually just threw the two phones up front and gave them to the judges and said, push this button here, this is suspended here, and go through. And they could actually see the money moving over. It is quite a big adventure. There's usually a lot of unknowns, and if you are going to fail, you'll usually find that you'll fail fast. And then it's like crash and burn. And then it's like, what do you deliver? What can you deliver? What can you show? I always like being there physically because most of the time I actually go and just talk to other people. So when you take breaks, because you actually do need to take breaks. If you hear heard of the Pomodoro technique, if so, raise your hand. You can virtually raise your hand if you've heard of it. So when I do these types of things, we do the Pomodoro technique straight. So you say, okay, you're in the hot seat, go for 30 minutes. At 45 minutes, document things and take a 15-minute break at least. So you have to do that, especially if you're working for 48 hours. No one can work for 48 hours straight and get anything valuable. I've slept on the table. I take some creature comforts with me. So I take a sleeping bag with me already pre-packed. I take a feather pillow with me because life's hard without a feather pillow, and I take a chain to strap to my laptop so that it doesn't disappear. Because I'm a bit paranoid about things disappearing. That's usually how we go, and I'm going to open it up for people to comment about experiences that they've had at hackathons, anything they've learned, or any questions they'd like to ask. We kept silence because people want to hear stories.
I've got a question.
Yeah.
So when you start, or when you look back at your various hackathons, has there been any kind of a strategy that you've employed more than once that helps you to just get traction? Because I mean, it could be quite overwhelming to, where do you start? How do you start? What do you do? How do you put together, a team, or how do you assign jobs to the people in the team? All that kind of stuff. Share a little bit of insight into your process, please.
So process is the first thing you meet up with a team. So you form a team. I always go alone because I want to form a team with people that I've not. You usually want a separation of skills. So you want someone who's good at front end. And if you can guarantee someone good at front end with a specific technology, grab them if they're an expert. If they're not an expert, it doesn't usually matter. If they're not an expert, you can usually get enough. I mean, if you're a full stack dev, you can program it yourself, but you decide what people's skill levels are and where they can work. If I'm associated to doing backend, you can work in your own little silos, but what you need to do is make sure that your integration points are planned together and that you spend time together for integration points. So if someone's doing the front end, do the plan beforehand. So like an example over here, I don't know if I've got a screenshot of it. When we were doing this one, we actually were saying, okay, this is the screenshot I'm going to do. Actually, always safe as examples. So we sat together and we went and said, okay, this is what it would look like on a phone. Okay, and we drew up some basic details. And then in this case, I went and and I'm not an Android. I went and I said, okay, here's the panic button. This is where it's going to go. Here's where we're going to put the password. And I did the mock-ups actually in Android Studio. And then I got the person who was designing them and said, okay, come, let's look. What's the next screen you want? What's the next screen you want? So we usually separate it from front end, back end. Someone who manages the process, who goes between various people who, if you need to research something, they'll go and they'll do the research and they'll come back with answers. So there's a troubleshooter. And then there's usually a test person who tests out the ideas with people so that functions as business. It's starting to sound like work. But they're more,
Yeah.
So they go and they find the business cases and they talk to various people and they phone people if they need to and they say, okay, if we need to have this feature, what do you think about it? Let's put a survey out on Twitter with the trending hashtag. Let's see what feedback we give. Let's document that feedback so that if the judges ask us something, we actually go and say, well, we made a survey for this and here's our survey results. And there were 20 people who participated and 5 of them said this and 6 of them said this. And we decided to analyze our time and use our time best. So we chose this feature, even though there's 5, we chose this feature because we knew we could package that feature in this time. And this other feature, which absolutely everyone wants, we will do at a later stage because it's somewhat more complex. So the first thing you do is you separate your team out. And you ask people what their best skill is. So you trust them. The debugger, they go between teams. So they go between individuals and they make sure that all the silos work. If they need to provide help somewhere, that's what they do. They provide the help wherever they need. That's usually the role that I fit in most of the time, is because I can usually go between both stages and then say, okay, come, let's talk about this, or come, let's go and talk about that. And all they really need is a basic understanding of developing. They don't really need huge coding experience. They need to know how to search on Stack Overflow and grepper, and they need to know how to search on whatever specific stack that they use. You let the stack professionals work within their stack. Does that answer what you were asking about?
That's cool. Thanks.
So then the next thing you want to do is you want to have something that actually solves the question. So in this case, we were solving an issue of safety and individual safety. So we were like, well, what's out there already? So the researcher goes and starts researching what's out there. The one developer goes and says, well, what type of technology do we need to do for the front end? The back end person says, okay, how am I going to mock this out if I need to mock it out? What do I need to go and build? The back end person usually just focuses on web APIs because they're nice and easy. So you build a web API and then you iron your front end to the web API and, it works. Like that's a nice structure to work. So the backend person, they really just need to know how to make REST surfaces. REST surfaces and connect to a database. So make your life easy. No huge calculations here usually. Most of it's just database work too. You give an input, it stores it. You can fetch you can fetch something for an output, you receive it. So that's most of the time where most of the labor is. So that you can show your markup or you can show your MVP. Judges' expectations on these are usually low. So they don't expect something to be perfectly working. If it crashes and burns, they go, oh, well, it crashed and burned. But I mean, if you get your mockups right, there's no reason why you can't show where the value would be and show some type of functional pursuit. So, for instance, this guy, okay, he had an integrated panic button and that was linked to like a Bluetooth device. So that was where our complication was. That's where we spent most of the time. Everything else was database work. So it's like, okay, someone puts in their contact and that's database work. Like it's easy. It's stored data on it. So we just got more options than we had. This one as well, a lot of our solutions is just database work. We just mocked out the bank account and showed what happens when they send money and when they pay dividends, and what they can actually do. So this one, what we did is we gave control to the individual to say, okay, well, I want to show these types of transactions coming in or going out. Like, I want to show generally how much goes out in a month. You know, like you get your credit card report. So for my business bank, so that I can provide investors some type of security, because I'm a small-time person, I want to just show my metadata. So I want to show, so far this month I've spent 5,000 Rand and I've had 6,000 Rand come in. And an investor can tie in and they can see that in a live data, like it's a graph. So you've got the front-end person and they pull in a graphing library that can translate data, and then the back-end person just creates a bank account where you say, okay, he's taking money out and you can see the graph changing as it goes. So some debugging, but this was all web-based and exposure. So the person logs in and says, okay, well, I'll show this and I'll show this and I'll show this type of metadata. And it's just drawing it to the screen. Like, it actually isn't rocket science. Like, if you find you have to do rocket science, you're probably overthinking what you can do in 48 hours. So the next thing is, what can you do in 48 hours? What could you deliver that shows value? So if it's something that you don't know how to do, then you time box it. Sounding very much like work nowadays, right? So you make a little
Completely.
You say the time box to see if we're going to continue down this road is 2 hours. Debugger, this is your task. Take 2 hours, and if this is on a point of failure and you can't do it, then researcher, you have to come in and you have to work. It's like a mini office experiment. You just got faster iterations of your sprint. And I mean, almost every single hackathon I've done, we've had the time box work where we said, I'll talk to you in 2 hours. Also, understand that people have a limit. So if they haven't slept in 12 hours and they've worked 12 hours straight with their small breaks and the coffee's running out, someone needs to monitor them and say, hey, there's a bed, there's a pillow, lie down for 2 hours. You know, take a walk for 2 hours. Don't talk to
people. Definitely.
You often find the productivity of taking that break for 2 hours after like a 4 or 8 hour stretch. You just ramp up your productivity afterwards, because when you come back and you're amped to go. So when you come back, you have a little meeting like a mini sprint where you say, okay, cool, we're about to start, we're going to go. And you got to feel excited about it. If you're not feeling excited about it, fix it. I've had hackathons where I worked at it for 24 hours and then said, guys, this just doesn't excite me. Like, if this was to replace my day job, I would quit. And understand, I'll still be there for the team. Like, if you need me for anything, like, let me know, but I'm taking a back role. Like, I'm not going to push this because my excitement isn't there. But when you get engagement, you also find your productivity just ramps up. So do something you're excited about. In that very beginning planning time, if you're not excited about it, find another team. You know, you're not stuck. No one's going to force you.
No, that's actually good advice.
And then just like monitor your energy level. Like, take a break when you need to take a break. And I've done it even I've done it in work once and twice when like there's serious pressure to have deliver something and you've got a hard deadline, where we do the death march. If anyone's done a death march here, please raise your hand. I have, and I admit it. And then you're useless for 3 days afterwards because you burn out. So if you're going to do a death march, end it on a Friday. So at least on Monday, you're compass mentis. But no one wants to do a death march in a hackathon. Like, you're not going to be useful on the last day. And you're definitely not going to be useful at work the next day. So if you're going to put your main job at risk, just don't do it. But I found that as I've gained more experience, I've rested more. I've said, look, we'll get back together at 2 in the morning or 4 in the morning and we'll continue. But I can't do any more. Like, I find I go to bed early. So I'm usually starting to be my most unproductive at about 10 o'clock at night. Like, that's where my productivity stops. Like, pretty much no matter what. But get me at 2 in the morning, which most developers aren't, and I'll be productive, So you have to got to know your own time rhythms before you go in and know when you're going to be productive so you can warn people. But, at 10, when you see me failing, coffee's not going to help. But at 2 in the morning, a shot of coffee and I'm awake and I'll be getting what I've committed to done so that when you're awake, we can sit down. So if we need to time box something for 2 hours so that you're awake at 4, that's when we time box it. That's when I tackle this specific challenge. And the last thing is you got to have skills of breaking down challenges into simple solutions. So each one of these, it's not like you're building this massive monolith, do microservices. Do something that does something very well, that's very small, that can be tied in, even if they're doing the shared database. And it just does its job because then you got some value out of it and you can reuse it over and over and over again anywhere in real life if you need be. And do something that excites you. It's the excitement you need. If you don't have excitement, it's not going to be fun. And find out about your fellows that are with you. Like that's half the fun of it. So like when you talk to people, you find out what their skills are. If you see them doing something really cool, ask for it to be shared. Ask them how it works. Ask them how you implement that technology. Like that's what I've done every single time. And I found every time I've done that, I've come away with something that I've reused it a month later.
I like that.
So I've pretty much always found out like a physical hackathon. So MTN hackathons with monetary rewards. MTN does a hackathon every year. It's called TADHack, and their rewards are pretty good. There's a legal hackathon that happens every year as well, and that's usually pretty easy, but they don't really give them a straight monetary reward. But if you get far enough in, they'll organize angel investors. So that's one that every year. Intellect does one, but that's more like a hiring push, and I don't usually do that because I'm not really trying to get hired by someone. So I up for is the legal hackathon and the MTN TADHack. Like those two are usually very interesting. Get some very interesting people. There were some sites that I go on. So there's DevPost that has international hackathon, and I should charge this more.
So the other No, it wasn't sponsored by Intellect, but they do it every year, and there is a nice reward on that. So DevPost does international hackathons, and that's been quite enjoyable for me. But that's all virtual hackathons, unfortunately, which I don't really gel with enough. Just with so much stuff virtual, I just keep a little bit of a distance. But I have done some really cool hackathons on there, and most of those hackathons now are all revolving around Bitcoin and wallets and blockchain. So if you've got interest there, there are a ton of hackathons happening right now, and probably for the next year. Like there's one every month. I'm currently doing a hackathon with NASA. It doesn't have a monetary reward, but dealing with poop on the way to Mars sounds really fun. And so we've got a chemical scientist involved and a few other people who could never like be astronauts. But all the international hackathons will have a monetary reward and it'll be in dollars. So you're looking at $1,000 up for most of them. Any other questions? And I wouldn't attend a hackathon if it was less than $1,000. Like I value my time more than that.
If nobody has a question, I actually want to ask something, a reverse question, sort of. If you had to set up a hackathon, how would you do that? What would be a nice hackathon to set up?
So this is an interesting thing because at my work currently I helped set up a hackathon earlier this year. Not this year, last year. So in October. And the first question you ask yourself is what is your goal? So you're trying to determine what outcome do you want from this hackathon? Do you want to promote teams working or cross-boundary teams? Do you want to promote innovation? Are you looking to try to create a new product? And that structures how you're going to run your hackathon and what your expectations are. Is there a technical challenge that no one seems to understand that you'd like to distribute more in the teams? And that's going to focus what your problem question is that you're going to pose to the attendees and how you're going to mark the hackathon. So that was the first question, and they were wanting more of a, look, this is the first time we're doing it. So we pretty much want like cross team involvement. So then it's like, okay, well, cool. Then the suggestion is say, okay, everyone who wants to sign up, but know that we're going to throw the names into a hat. There's going to be a tester involved. There's going to be a developer involved. There's going to be a front-end dev involved. There's going to be a BA person involved, and you're going to get a lucky team from that, and you're going to work together in your normal day job. And we're going to give you 24 hours to sit down and talk about things and do things and that. And that was quite nice for work because they paid us, right? And they gave us prizes. So they not only paid us to do work and gave us a free rein if we signed up to do, you know, it's like, well, we're taking away 2 points from your sprint work for this hackathon.
That's all right.
Sorry?
That's all right.
It's wonderful, right? Because it's like 2 days that I'm getting paid anyway. So like that's all the commitment you need, right? Like they give you relief from the sprint, they take 2 points away so that you can spend time on the hackathon. And those 2 days are booked for the hackathon. Pretty much everyone's involved. So it was quite fun. But we came up with some interesting technical things. Unfortunately, don't believe I'm legally allowed to share what we did in that. And sometimes that happens with hackathons. But yeah, it was interesting. It was about, I can say the basic view is creating a user experience for interacting with accounts. and different types of accounts. So
What prizes did you get?
So, they gave me a laptop bag and they gave me a few other things. Unfortunately, it was originally going to be 1,000 Rand or 5,000 Rand take lot vouchers. And then work suddenly realized maybe they were being a bit too expensive and the budget wasn't there. So they have an internal company shop. So they just gave us money to the internal company shop.
All right, you got something out.
No, look, I mean, I got a laptop bag out of it. I got a really nice purse out of it too. I got a pen set that proved to me how terrible their pen sets were, which was a pity because I really like pen sets, and I got it like a really nice leather book out of it. So I didn't go away empty-handed, and it was fun to do, and I learned some roles that other people were doing that I wouldn't normally have learned.
I think that's also good for team building.
It is very good for team building, but it has to be seen as part of team building. So if you don't regularly do it, if you don't promote it in the culture, it's not going to help. So a lot of people think if you do a once-off event, like teams are suddenly going to work, right? That's not the case.
Oh yeah.
You got to do consistent work for doing team building, and my experience with it so far is the people who are doing it for team building think one event is all they need and they're gonna splash some money on it and it's gonna be done. Where it's actually more cost effective to do smaller team building events more regularly and just devote an hour a week at it for 6 months and make sure that people attend. Like that's the hardest thing. I know at least where I'm working, we've got a interesting layout. So we've got subcontractors and we've got like permanent staff. And the permanent staff don't really want to do anything outside their job description. And the subcontractors are being paid for it, so they'll be there. But they're like, well, my contract is 6 months or a year, right? So at the end of the year, like I'm outside this team anyway. So where's my commitment? So you find it just very hard to get the people in the room. And that's a problem. It's actually a problem.
Yeah.
It's a cultural problem. And you won't fix cultural problems with one-off events. That I can tell you. And it's a shame. But I mean, if they did it over and over and over again, then yeah, they'd actually get some traction.
Yeah, I'm looking at it from a marketing perspective.
So usually internal hackathons aren't really marketing. If they open it out to the public, then it's more of a marketing.
Yeah, exactly.
So if you look at MTN Tad Hack, their marketing perspective is that weekend they're usually trending on Twitter and social media, and they're running all their prizes, spot prizes on social media. So they pretty much push trending on anything technical for that weekend all the way up to number 1. So they pretty much are good at that. And the only reason they sponsor prizes is MTN looks at what happens and they've got rights to whatever gets developed there in terms of ideas. So they're technically paying you to generate ideas for them. But the bigger thing is that they're getting marketing out there, and we'd usually find like 2 or 3 months later, they're suddenly on a HR drive to get tech people in. So
Yeah.
they time it actually very well with their technical input. And from the hackathons I've been to, it's probably one of the better run hackathons. They've got all the physical space, they've got all the infrastructure there physically. they've got caterers, they've got like they put money in it. Like that's a 10th of their marketing budget for the year gone just on the hackathon. So yeah, they market it, but they open it out to external people. So the other question is, if you're doing it as marketing, know that you're going to be trying to pull people in rather than internal teams. And you probably want to give an idea of like what topics are going to be covered before the stage. So often you'll find out that a hackathon's happening, and you'll find the general information about it, but they'll only give the real like nuts and bolts of that information on the actual starting day of the hackathon. So there's usually a lead up to these hackathons, usually 3 weeks before. You've got a basic idea of what's going to be happening, of like what the topics are going to be, but no actual like, this is what we're going to focus on, this is how we're going to mark you, this is what you need to cater for.
Sure, that's very helpful. Thanks.
Cool. Does anyone other than Evolt, even if Evolt does want to ask any more questions, want to ask questions? So, Asianda, go for it.
Hi, I'm not sure if you covered this. There's a part of the video where you want very audible. So besides MTN and Intellect, what other places, and I think you said Dev Post, where else would you find like list of hackathons happening? Or is it something that you would just like maybe Google or try to search on different Facebook groups to get the hackathons that are being that are happening for this period or in South Africa?
So at like, if we look at DevPost, like this is like how they, let's just stop presenting. I'll make this big and I'll share it. So I actually search here now if I'm wanting to look for anything that has actual monetary value. So like you can see like what's going on. I'm signed up to pretty much everything, and like you can see the prizes, like anything blockchain. That's where the prizes are right now.
Holy
like,
crap.
now you understand when I say like in terms of monetary value, this is what you want to be studying if you want to attend hackathons right now. Like,
And those are actual dollars, not some token or something.
That's actual dollars. Social goods usually vary, but look how many hackathons there are. So there's 16 hackathons here. There's 44 hackathons there. So you can try to participate in 44 hackathons, but it's a lot. But if you're working on blockchain, like that's usually where the money is. And then like usually fintech is quite high as well. I don't usually look at IoT things.
Look at design. I've always said design's useless.
Yeah, design like you'll starve doing those hackathons. So yeah, I mean, if I'm looking at it, that's where I'd look right now, is blockchain and how to get integrated with the blockchain. I actually have been building my own blockchain on C#, just for the experience of it. And I've been going through tutorials on how to make your own blockchain in C# and actually work with blocks and your hashing and the techniques, just because this is where the money is, and this is where the money is going to be in the future. Like, this is also where all the smart people hang out that are more smarter than me. There used to be a place that I'd used to search for local hackathons in South Africa, but like if you're looking for monetary, it's all the international hackathons. Like that's where the money is. And $8 million is a lot of money in 16 hackathons. It's basically $500,000 per hackathon. So that's where the money is. Like you can live off this, by the way, if you got good at it. And you do well. You have to find a way to get it into your bank account here.
Well, first win, then worry about stuff like that. I see there's a question.
Yep. Yeah, hackathons have led to jobs, have led to referrals. They've led to many businesses that have run for half a year and come down. Sianda, you still got your hand up. Have I answered your question?
Yes, thanks.
Awesome. So, yeah, like, usually I use hackathons in my actual CV. So I state which hackathons I did, which hackathons we came in, what position we came in, what we did, what technology we played with. Like that's all CV, and you've got usually your code there, you've got your Git repos there. So I like thinking of CVs as something that you can promote to people and show people. So you can say, look, I did this hackathon, we came first, here's the GitHub repo. You've done the work, you got paid for it, and you might get paid in the future because you just did it, because you did something that someone was interested in.
Nice.
So yeah, it's also CV padding, because you can say where you worked for somewhere, but it doesn't say how good of a developer you are. And I mean, I was looking for work last year, and one of the reasons I got the job I got was I just provided examples of hackathons with code. And this is the code I wrote. This is how we integrated this library. These are the challenges and these are the problems. Problems that we solved, and these are the problems that we had left. That makes it very apparent. Then your questions are, okay, I see you can do this. What are you like as a person?
That's quite useful stuff.
Yep. So we'll just wait for Rakesh to type their question out. Does anyone have a question in the meantime? Well, it's good to have a portfolio. So if you have a portfolio and you go to a job and you provide a portfolio, it tells them how you code pretty much immediately. And I truly believe keeping a current portfolio of what inspires you is always good. And I mean, in all honesty, a lot of the work I do is in the end very boring. Like it's challenging, but it's boring. If you want excitement, go to a place where it's going to challenge you a lot. And it's going to be something that you can pick. Yeah, so hackathons even earlier than when you're still coding. I did cover this earlier, but usually you do have some business needs, and if you have a good team, you'll usually have a senior dev who's open, and you'll have intermediate devs and junior devs and people who don't even know how to code, but they've got a business idea and they're interested. And that's the type of people I try to pick up. So I try to pick up people who have interesting ideas because it's fun. And they can do a little bit, or you can say, look, write this code here and move it here and test it. So every level is usually open. And I mean, you can even see over here, they've got beginner friendly tagged, and there's prizes for it as well. So you sometimes get a lot of beginners who haven't done much. So yeah, I would say I find a lot of people who go to hackathons are usually younger blood as well. So when you start getting older, your day job starts getting harder. And you do reach a level where you start burning out. So when you're coding every day and you have a weekend and you're like, oh, sheesh, I can use this weekend to relax or do a hackathon, sometimes you choose, let's relax this weekend rather than do anything. So usually you find that's more senior devs that eventually start making that decision because they've been spending just so much time coding. So the vast majority of people actually at hackathons are usually people who are starting out or people who are just wanting to meet other people. This one makes it a lot easier for me to win, usually when I go to these, because it's usually people who are just starting out. I mean, if you don't expose yourself to the hard topics, then you might never get there. Oh yeah, and if a senior dev taking full advantage of younglings, if you got a hackathon and the senior dev's there, they'll say, no, you do this work, I'll come and help you, and you do this work. So you get that, but they're there to help. So they use you as slave labor.
Just like normal office work.
Exactly. It's a mini office and running. The more I attend hackathons, the more I'm like, it's just, you just compress every 3 hours into a day and call it office work, because that's what it's like.
Here we go.
And you make your meetings as streamlined as possible, and you deal with issues as fast as possible, and you move on.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yep, and I mean, that's blockchain is what, and like, you look at this, it's not like there's a lot of them. There's only 16 of them. But it's the amount of money going into blockchain right now. I'm actually surprised. I'm expecting to see NFTs starting to pitch up now, because that's also where a lot of money is. And usually this tells you where the job market's going to go in the next 5 to 10 years. So if you just looked at prize value and the amount of hackathons, I'm expecting blockchain to be on everyone's work agenda. So you'll want to know something about Solaris and Selenium contracts and stuff like that. And it's also why I'm starting to learn it. So I'm learning about NFTs right now. That's in my view. I'm starting to learn about just how the basic blockchain works. I'm starting to learn about how to generate coins and to manage coins and run through coins. And that's where I see the money in the future internationally, is there. Cool. If there's no more questions, then have a happy night.
Thank you very much. This was very informative. And it's a lot of money to be made.
Yeah, well, you win one of those if you've got enough money in a group of 4 to put a down payment on a house.
Yeah.
Like, it's hard because the competition here is where all the competition is right now.
That's
So
true.
that's where your senior devs are all sitting and fighting. And as I said, this is where the smart people are hanging out right now.
Yeah, that's true.
And that's where the money is. Cool. Well, I hope everyone has a wonderful evening, and I've given them something to think about and something to look into.
Awesome. Thanks, Jim. Much appreciated.
Pleasure.